The morning at the mansion began like any other day. The sun had just risen, and the large house was slowly waking up. The kitchen staff moved around quietly, preparing breakfast. The gardeners were already outside watering plants before the heat of the day settled in. And inside the hallway, where soft light fell across the marble floor, the young maid everyone simply called Lena was sweeping. Lena had been working at the mansion for only a few months, but she was already known as someone who didn't cause trouble, didn't gossip, and didn't complain, even when the work became too much. She was small in size, but she moved with a kind of quiet energy, like she was always trying to stay out of the way. Most of the staff liked her. Some even admired her because she worked so hard and still managed to smile at the end of long days. She came from simple beginnings, and her job here was important to her. Every month she sent almost all of her pay back home to support her younger brother. She rarely bought anything for herself, except maybe a new pair of shoes when the old ones had worn through. But she didn't mind. She always said that as long as she could work, she would be fine. That morning, she was cleaning the hallway on the second floor. The mansion was quiet because the owner, known to the staff simply as Mr. Hale, was still away on a business trip. Whenever he wasn't home, everyone breathed a little easier. It wasn't that he was cruel. He was just sharp, short-tempered at times, strict, and since his wife had passed away the year before, he had changed even more. He became distant, easily irritated, and sometimes harsh without meaning to be. Lena had met him only a few times. She always kept her head down, did her work, and avoided giving him any reason to notice her. She liked it that way. She was dusting the long shelves that lined the wall. They held rare things, art pieces, old books, and one special item, a glass sculpture his late wife had given him. It stood on a wooden stand near the center of the hallway. Everyone on the staff knew not to get too close to it. It wasn't just expensive. It meant something to him. It was one of the few things he kept exactly where she had placed it. Lena had never even touched it. She worked around it carefully, moving slowly so she wouldn't bump into anything. She had just finished dusting the lower shelves when she heard the front door downstairs open. She paused, confused. No one was supposed to arrive this early. Then she heard hurried footsteps and the raised voice of the butler. "Sir, welcome back. We didn't expect you so soon." Her heart skipped. Mr. Hale was home. She swallowed and continued dusting, trying not to let nerves get to her. She focused on her work, telling herself there was no reason to panic. He rarely came upstairs this early. Maybe he would go straight to his study downstairs. But the footsteps grew louder, heavy, fast. Coming up the staircase, she stepped aside quietly, holding her dusting cloth to her chest. She stood near the wall, letting him pass. He walked with quick, determined steps, his face tight with irritation, his eyes tired. He carried a phone in one hand, and his jaw was clenched as if he'd been arguing with someone before he even walked in. He didn't look at her. He didn't look at anyone. He walked straight ahead like he was lost in his own thoughts. Then everything happened so fast that Lena barely had time to react. A sharp, sudden gust of wind forced its way in through the open balcony door at the end of the hallway. The storm last night must have loosened the latch, and now the door swung inward with force. The wind rushed through the hallway, strong enough to push papers, shake the curtains, and rattle the shelves. Lena gasped and turned toward the balcony door. She took a step, intending to close it before something fell. But she was already too late. The wooden stand holding the glass. The sculpture trembled as the wind hit it. The sculpture wobbled once, twice. Then, as if time slowed down, Lena watched the delicate glass tilt, slide, and fall. It smashed against the floor with a sound so sharp that it felt like the whole mansion shook. Tiny pieces scattered everywhere, glittering like broken ice. Mr. Hale froze. His eyes widened. For a moment, he couldn't even breathe. Lena stood completely still. Unable to move, her heart hammering inside her chest, he turned his head slowly, staring first at the shattered glass, then at the stand, then at her. His grief, his shock, his anger, all of it sparked at once. "What did you do?" His voice cracked, full of disbelief and fury. Lena felt her lips part, but no sound came out at first. Sir, I didn't? You didn't? What? His voice rose sharply, echoing through the hallway. This was the last gift my wife gave me, and you destroyed it. His words stabbed at her. She shook her head quickly, her hands trembling. Sir, I didn't touch it. The wind, he repeated, as if she had insulted him. Do you expect me to believe that? That this just happened on its own? She stepped back slightly, feeling crushed under his stare. Please, sir, I would never touch it. I was just cleaning. The door, enough. His voice cut through her words like a blade. I don't want excuses. The butler, who had rushed upstairs after hearing the crash, stood nearby, but didn't say anything. The rest of the staff had gathered at a distance, watching, afraid to come closer. Lena felt her throat tighten. She wanted to speak, to explain properly, but her voice wouldn't come out right. She felt small, helpless, and cornered. Mr. Hale pointed at the shattered sculpture as if it were proof. You had no right to be near it. You ruined something priceless. I trusted my staff to care for this place, and this is what happens. She looked down at the floor, her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry. I didn't mean I don't want to hear anymore, he snapped. Pack your things. You're dismissed. Her breath caught. Sir, please, you're dismissed, he repeated, cold and firm. There was no arguing with him. No way to reason. His anger had already made up his mind. Lena felt heat rise behind her eyes, but she forced herself not to cry in front of him. She slowly bent down and picked up her cleaning cloth, holding it tightly like it could keep her steady. The broken glass lay between them, shining painfully in the sunlight. She stepped back, giving him space, and slowly walked down the hallway, while the staff watched with silent sympathy. No one dared speak. No one dared defend her. Not because they didn't care, but because they feared the consequences if they challenged him in that moment. When she reached the corridor near the stairs, she paused and looked back only once. Mr. Hale was kneeling beside the broken sculpture, his head bowed, his shoulders shaking slightly. Whether he was angry, grieving, or both, she couldn't tell. Lena walked away quietly. She made her way to the staff quarters, her hands shaking, her chest heavy. She packed her small bag. There wasn't much to take. A few clothes, a small notebook, her worn-out shoes, and the money she had saved for the month. She looked around the small room that had been her home, even if only for a short time. It felt strange how quickly life could change. Just minutes ago, she had been doing her job like any normal day. Now, everything was falling apart. When she stepped outside, the sky looked calm, as if the world had no idea what had just happened. The air was cool, the ground still damp from last night's rain. She walked toward the gate, trying to steady her breathing. The security guard gave her a sad look. I'm sorry, Lena, he said quietly. She forced a small smile. It's okay. Thank you. But it wasn't okay. She felt a heaviness in her chest she couldn't explain. She had lost the job she desperately needed, and worst of all, she was accused of something she didn't do. She had tried to explain, but no one listened. Not even for a moment. As she walked down the long driveway, she kept her head down and tried to hold back the tears. She didn't want anyone to see her break down. She didn't want to look weak. But the sadness kept growing until it felt impossible to contain. When she reached the quiet road outside the mansion, one tear slipped down her face, then another. She wiped them quickly, telling herself she had to stay strong. She had to figure out what to do next. Her brother depended on her. She couldn't fall apart. But in that moment, standing alone on the empty road, she felt truly defeated. Behind her, in the mansion she had just left, Mr. Hale was still in the hallway, staring at the broken sculpture. His anger had faded, replaced by a crushing sense of guilt and sorrow. But he didn't look for explanations. He didn't ask questions. He didn't wonder whether he had misunderstood what he saw. All he saw was the broken gift his wife had once placed in his hands, and someone to blame. Lena walked farther down the road, her figure slowly growing smaller against the morning light. She didn't know that the truth would eventually come out, She didn't know that one mistake, one moment, would change not only her future, but his as well. For now, all she knew was that she was alone, lost, and unsure where to go next, and the mansion behind her, the one she had worked so hard in, no longer felt like a place she belonged. Lena walked along the narrow street outside the mansion, her bag feeling heavier than it should. Each step was slow, as if the world around her had grown unfamiliar. The city was waking up, street vendors setting up their small stalls, the distant honk of cars, and the smell of fresh bread coming from a nearby bakery, but none of it felt real. All she could think about was what had just happened. And the sting of being wrongly accused, her mind replayed the scene again and again. The way the glass sculpture had wobbled, the crash, Mr. Hale's sharp voice, the feeling of him pointing at her like she was guilty. It made her chest ache. She had tried to explain, but it had been no use. He hadn't listened. No one had. The fear and humiliation still weighed on her heavily. Finally, she reached the small apartment she shared with her brother. It was modest, a simple 2-room space that barely had enough for them both. Her brother, who was younger by a few years, had already gotten up. He was washing a few dishes in the small kitchen, humming quietly. He looked up when he saw her standing in the doorway, her face pale and her eyes red from holding back tears. "Lena," he asked softly, setting the dishes aside. "What happened? Are you okay?" She shook her head slowly, her voice barely audible. "No, I'm not okay. I lost my job." Her hands shook as she set the bag down. "And he blamed me for something I didn't do." Her brother stepped closer, wrapping his arms around her. "Oh, Lena, I'm so sorry. I know how hard you work. They can't just treat you like that." She leaned into him, letting herself feel a little of the sadness she had been holding inside. "It wasn't just about losing the job," she whispered. He said, "I broke something very important. Something that belonged to his wife. And he didn't even listen when I tried to explain. I don't know what to do." Her brother let her cry a little longer, his own eyes misting over. "You didn't do it," he said firmly. "I know you didn't. You've never hurt anyone or anything intentionally. We'll figure this out." Lena nodded slowly, though the weight in her chest didn't lighten. She had always known that life would be hard, but she hadn't expected someone to accuse her so publicly of something she didn't do. She had done everything right, followed every rule, and yet, in a single moment, she had been blamed for something beyond her control. The morning passed slowly. They barely ate breakfast, sitting in silence while the city outside buzzed with life. Lena kept thinking about the mansion, about Mr. Hale's angry face, and the way the staff had stood silently watching. Some of them looked sad, some looked shocked, but no one had dared to speak up. It hurt her more than anything. She had trusted them in a small way, and they hadn't stood by her. Finally, an older woman who had worked at the mansion for years called Lena. It was the head housekeeper, someone who had seen Lena work hard and quietly for months. Lena hesitated before answering, unsure if she wanted to hear from anyone connected to the mansion. But she picked up the phone. "Lena, it's me," the woman said gently. "I saw what happened this morning. I wanted to tell you. I know you didn't do it." Lena's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were a little different. Relief mingled with the sadness. "Thank you," she whispered. It felt like no one believed me." "I know," the woman said softly. "It wasn't fair, but I promise you, we'll make sure the truth comes out. Just give it some time. Don't lose hope." They talked for a while, and Lena felt a small spark of hope for the first time since the accident. She knew it would be difficult to go back to the mansion or prove her innocence. But hearing someone speak kindly, someone who believed her, reminded her that she wasn't entirely alone. After the call, Lena tried to focus on practical things. She had rent to pay, bills to manage, and her brother depended on her. But even as she sorted through her small stack of papers, her mind kept drifting back to the mansion. She couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Hale, about the grief he must be feeling, about how the sculpture had reminded him of his late wife. She felt a strange mixture of sadness for him and anger for what he had done to her. She knew that no matter what he was feeling, he had wronged her. He had accused her unfairly, and that left a mark. Hours passed slowly. She cleaned the small apartment, prepared a simple lunch for herself and her brother, and tried to distract herself with chores. But even with the busyness, the humiliation from the morning refused to fade. Every time she thought she could move on, she saw his face, heard his voice, and felt the weight of his accusation pressing down on her. Meanwhile, back at the mansion, the situation was very different. Mr. Hale paced the long hallway, staring at the broken sculpture again and again. He couldn't focus on anything else. His anger had faded into something heavier: guilt, confusion, and a strange emptiness. The thing he treasured the most, the last memory of his wife, shattered on the marble floor, and he had no one to blame but the maid. Or so he thought. For hours, he didn't speak to anyone, didn't review security footage, didn't ask the staff what really happened. He was too wrapped up in his grief. The staff moved carefully around him, afraid to make any mistake. They avoided looking at him directly, knowing that even a small misstep could earn them his sharp criticism. It wasn't until late that evening that the head of security finally decided to check the cameras. The mansion had cameras everywhere, and for months the staff had relied on them to monitor any unusual activity. The head of security had always respected Lena, knowing she was careful and honest. He felt uneasy about what had happened and decided it was time to see the truth. The footage revealed everything. Lena hadn't touched the sculpture at all. In fact, the camera clearly showed her dusting the lower shelves carefully, avoiding the sculpture completely. Then, just moments later, the balcony door had swung open violently, and the wind had pushed the sculpture off its stand. The whole accident had nothing to do with her. The head of security felt a mixture of relief and anger. Relief that Lena was innocent. Anger at Mr. Hale for acting so quickly, for blaming her without checking the facts. He went directly to Mr. Hale's study, replayed the footage, and waited. Mr. Hale didn't even look up. He was seated, staring at his hands. When the head of security finally spoke, "Sir, you should see this," he said quietly. The maid didn't touch it. The wind, it caused the sculpture to fall. Mr. Hale's eyes widened. He leaned forward, staring at the screen, watching the clip over and over. He saw her moving carefully, saw the wind push the door open, saw the sculpture topple on its own. He felt his stomach twist. All his anger, all his accusations, all his harsh words had been aimed at someone who hadn't done anything wrong. For the first time in hours, he felt a deep sense of shame. He had allowed his grief to cloud his judgment. He had accused an innocent person, and worse, he had humiliated her in front of the staff. Back at Lena's apartment, she tried to get some sleep, but her mind was restless. She couldn't stop thinking about the accident, about Mr. Hale's anger, and about the injustice of the situation. She had done nothing wrong, yet she had been punished. She thought about what the head housekeeper had said and clung to it. Maybe the truth would come out. Maybe someone would see that she had been honest all along. Her brother sat beside her quietly. "Do you want to tell anyone else?" he asked softly. I don't know," Lena admitted. "Maybe it's better to wait. If it's meant to be, the truth will come out." The night was long, filled with quiet fears and whispered worries. Lena stayed awake longer than her brother, thinking about the mansion, about the job, and about the future. She didn't know how Mr. Hale would react once he realized the truth. She didn't know if he would apologize, or if he would even care enough to make things right. But deep down, a small spark of hope had begun to grow. She had worked hard, been honest, and had tried to do the right thing. One day, she told herself, someone would see that. One day, she would be recognized for who she really was, not for a mistake she didn't make. And somewhere in the mansion, Mr. Hale sat staring at the broken sculpture, unaware that the truth had already begun to reveal itself. The head of security had seen it. Soon someone would have to confront him with it. And when that day came, Lena's world might change again, but this time, not because of an accident, but because of the truth. The next morning, Lena woke with a dull ache in her chest. Sleep had come only in fits, her mind replaying the events from the day before. She sat on the edge of her bed, rubbing her eyes, listening to the distant hum of the city outside. Her brother was already up, getting ready for school. He noticed her pensive look and paused. "You're thinking about yesterday again, aren't you?" he asked softly. Lena nodded, trying to put on a brave face. "I can't stop. I keep thinking, what if the truth never comes out? What if they all still think I did it?" Her brother shook his head firmly. "They will see it. Someone knows you didn't do it. You can't lose hope now." She wanted to believe him. She tried to focus on the small things making breakfast, helping her brother get ready, but the memory of Mr. Hale's anger lingered, heavy in her mind. She thought about how quickly he had judged her, how loudly he had blamed her in front of the staff. It wasn't just the accusation. It was the feeling of being small, powerless, and misunderstood. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Mr. Hale sat in his study, staring blankly at the floor. The previous day's anger had faded, but it had been replaced by something heavier, a gnawing guilt that refused to go away. He replayed the crash in his mind, the glass shattering, and Lena's face frozen with shock. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw her standing there, quiet, innocent, and blamed. The head of security had already informed him about the footage, but he hadn't wanted to watch it at first. It was too much, too soon. But now, the thought of what really happened wouldn't leave him alone. Finally, he called the security chief into his office. "Show me," he said quietly, his voice low, almost a whisper. The security chief nodded and played the recording. Slowly, Mr. Hale's sharp features softened as he watched Lena carefully cleaning the hallway. She moved around the sculpture with caution, never touching it, never stepping too close. Then the balcony door swung open and the wind hit the wooden stand. The sculpture toppled over, breaking into pieces as it hit the marble floor. He could see it clearly now. Lena had done nothing wrong. He sat back in his chair, feeling a weight pressing down on his chest. Guilt, embarrassment, anger at himself for reacting so quickly. He had accused an innocent girl, humiliated her in front of everyone, and pushed her out of his house. And for what? A windblown accident. The realization was painful. He had let his grief cloud his judgment. He had assumed the worst, punished someone who didn't deserve it, and he hadn't even paused to consider the facts. He had to fix this, but he didn't know how. How could he apologize after treating her so harshly? How could he make her understand that he hadn't meant to hurt her personally, even though he had? Back at Lena's apartment, she tried to get on with the day. She cleaned the small living room, swept the floor, and organized her few belongings. But her mind kept drifting to the mansion. She thought about the broken sculpture, about Mr. Hale's anger, and about the staff who had watched silently. The unfairness of it all made her stomach twist. She had been blamed for something she didn't do. No one had defended her. Her phone rang suddenly, breaking her thoughts. It was the head housekeeper from the mansion. Lena hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" she said quietly. "Lena, it's me," the woman said gently. "I just wanted to check on you. Are you okay?" Lena took a deep breath. I'm managing. Thank you for calling." "I know yesterday was hard," the woman continued. "I just want you to know, I saw what happened. I know you didn't touch the sculpture. Don't worry. The truth will come out. Someone will see it. You just have to be patient." Lena's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't just from sadness. There was a small spark of hope in her chest. Someone believed her. Someone who had seen her work honestly, who knew her character, standing by her even when Mr. Hale hadn't. "Thank you," she said softly. "It means a lot." They spoke for a few more minutes, and Lena felt a little lighter when the call ended. She tried to focus on the day ahead, doing what she could to keep her life moving forward, even though it felt like the world had shifted beneath her feet. Meanwhile, at the mansion, Mr. Hale called a meeting with the head of security and a few trusted staff members. His voice was calm but serious. "I watched the footage," he said, and there was a tremor in his voice. "I was wrong to accuse Lena. She didn't touch the sculpture. It was an accident. The wind caused it." The staff looked at him with surprise. They had seen him angry and sharp yesterday, and now he was speaking differently. Some of them exchanged quiet glances, relieved that justice had been revealed, even if it was late. "I want her back," he continued, "and I want to apologize personally. She should never have been treated that way." The security chief nodded. "We can contact her. I'm sure she'll want an explanation." Mr. Hale hesitated for a moment, unsure of how she would react. He had been harsh, unfair, and public in his accusations. How could he hope she would forgive him? But he knew he had to try. He couldn't undo the past, but he could take the first step toward making it right. Back at Lena's apartment, the morning passed slowly. She and her brother shared a quiet breakfast, trying to laugh at small things to take their minds off the tension of yesterday. But there was an unspoken weight in the air, a feeling that life had changed. She wondered if she would ever return to the mansion. She wondered if Mr. Hale would even care enough to seek her out. Suddenly, the phone rang again. She picked it up, expecting another call from the head housekeeper. But this time it was a different voice, a calm, respectful tone she didn't recognize at first. "Lena," the voice said, "this is the driver for Mr. Hale's household. He asked me to come and see you if you were willing." Lena froze. Her heart began to pound. Could it really be true? Was he coming to apologize? Or was this another mistake? She hesitated for a moment, then replied cautiously, "Yes, I can meet." The driver arrived shortly after, a polite middle-aged man who led her to a car waiting outside. Lena glanced at her brother before leaving, feeling a mix of nervousness and hope. He nodded silently, squeezing her hand. "You can do this," he said. The drive to the mansion was quiet. Lena kept her eyes on the passing streets, trying to steady her breathing. She thought about how things might unfold. Would he apologize? Would he be sincere? Would he even acknowledge the pain he had caused her? When they arrived at the mansion, Lena stepped out of the car, feeling the weight of the place she had been unfairly dismissed from. The large doors loomed before her, and for a moment she considered turning back. But she reminded herself why she was here. She deserved the truth to be heard. She deserved an apology. And maybe, just maybe, she could reclaim a part of her dignity. Mr. Hale met her in the grand hallway, his posture straight, but his eyes reflecting the guilt he felt. He held out his hand for a brief moment, not to intimidate, but as a gesture of peace. "Lena," he said quietly, his voice softer than she had ever heard it. I need to apologize. I was wrong. I judged you without listening. I accused you of something you didn't do, and I humiliated you. You did nothing wrong." Lena's hands shook slightly, but she didn't move away. I appreciate you saying that," she said softly. "It was difficult yesterday." "I know," he admitted, "and I can't undo what I said, but I want to make it right. I want you to know I understand the truth now. The sculpture. It was an accident. You had nothing to do with it." Lena listened quietly, her chest tight. She could feel the sincerity in his voice, but the hurt of yesterday was still fresh. "Thank you for telling me," she said. I just want to be treated fairly." "You will be," he promised. "I want you back at the mansion. Not just because of your work, but because I want to make amends. I was wrong, and I hope you can see that." For a moment, they both stood in silence, the weight of the past day lingering between them. Lena felt a mixture of relief and cautious hope. She had been heard. She had been believed. And perhaps this time, things could be different. When she finally nodded, agreeing to hear him out, Mr. Hale's shoulders seemed to relax slightly. He had feared confrontation, feared rejection, but her willingness to listen gave him a small sense of relief. The first step had been taken, but the journey ahead was still uncertain. Both of them had been changed by the accident, and now it was time to begin repairing what had been broken between them, and perhaps within themselves as well. Lena stood at the doorway, unsure of what to do next. She had never expected to return to the mansion so soon. The weight of yesterday still pressed heavily on her chest, and the memory of being blamed in front of everyone made her hands tremble slightly. But here she was, facing the man who had accused her wrongly. And there was something in his expression that made her hesitate, less something genuine. Almost vulnerable, Mr. Hale stepped forward slowly. as if measuring each movement, careful not to seem intimidating. He was still the tall, commanding figure she remembered, but his eyes held a softness she had never seen before. He didn't raise his voice, didn't gesture sharply. He only looked at her, waiting for her to speak first. Lena swallowed hard. I don't know what to say, she whispered. Her voice was quiet, shaky. It's hard to forget what happened yesterday. He nodded slowly, his jaw tight. I know, he said, and his tone carried an honesty that surprised her. And I don't expect you to forget. I want to tell you the truth. I was wrong. Completely wrong. You didn't touch the sculpture. The accident. It wasn't your fault. I let my anger and my grief decide for me, and I hurt you. Shh. She looked down at her hands, fidgeting slightly. You didn't even ask me what happened, she said softly. You didn't listen at all? I know, he admitted, his voice quiet, almost a whisper. I should have. I should have paused. I should have trusted you, or at least asked questions. I don't have an excuse. I was selfish and blinded by my own pain. I'm sorry. The words were simple, but they carried weight. Lena felt a mix of emotions, anger, relief, sadness, and a small glimmer of hope. She wanted to step back, to leave, to protect herself from being hurt again. But she stayed. She wanted to hear the apology in full, wanted to know he truly understood the damage he had done. I accept your apology, she said finally, her voice steady despite the flutter in her chest. But I want you to understand, it wasn't just about the sculpture. It was about trust, about respect. And when you accused me, it felt like I didn't matter at all. He nodded, looking deeply at her. I understand, he said. I see that now, and I want to make it right. Not just with words, but with actions. Lena stayed silent for a moment, letting the sincerity in his voice sink in. It was hard to believe after everything that had happened, that someone who had treated her so harshly could now be so earnest. She wanted to be cautious, wanted to protect herself from being hurt again. But a small part of her wanted to believe him. She began, unsure how to continue. I don't know if I can just go back like nothing happened. I need time. I understand, he said immediately. I don't want to rush you. But I do want to offer you your job back, with proper respect. And with the assurance that nothing like yesterday will ever happen again. You've proven your honesty and your dedication. I should have seen that from the start. Lena looked at him, really looked at him for the first time. She saw not just the wealthy, strict employer she had known, but a man who had been broken by grief, a man who had acted out of pain rather than malice. The realization made her chest ache in a new way, not from fear, but from understanding. She took a deep breath. I need to think about it, she said quietly. I need to know that things will actually be different. He nodded, his eyes earnest. I promise, Lena. I will do everything I can to make things right. And if you decide to return, I want you to feel safe, respected, and valued, not just as a worker, but as a person. For the first time in days, Lena felt a small weight lift from her shoulders. The tension in her chest eased slightly. She nodded slowly. I'll consider it. Take all the time you need, he said. I'll wait. They stood in silence for a few moments, the quiet of the mansion surrounding them. The sunlight streamed through the tall windows, highlighting the cracks in the walls and the dust in the corners, but also the beauty of the space, the quiet elegance that Lena had always admired. She realized she had missed this place more than she wanted to admit. Even if it had been a place of humiliation just yesterday, Mr. Hale cleared his throat softly. I also want to thank you for your patience. Even after being accused unfairly, you didn't retaliate. You didn't raise your voice. You left with dignity. That says a lot about you, Lena. More than you might think. Lena felt a small blush rise in her cheeks, though she kept her head down. I just tried to stay calm, she said softly. It wasn't easy. I know it wasn't, he said, his voice gentle, and I'm sorry for making it so difficult. For a moment, the air between them softened, the tension easing just enough that it was possible to breathe. Lena realized that Mr. Hale was not the same man she had seen yesterday. He had changed in that brief encounter, his sharp edges dulled by realization and regret. She could see now that he was capable of listening, of understanding, of making amends, as the conversation continued. Mr. Hale spoke about practical matters, about the staff, about the mansion, about how he wanted things to be fair and respectful if she returned. He offered a small raise, not as a bribe, but as recognition of her dedication and integrity. He explained that he wanted to rebuild trust, not just with her, but within the household as a whole. Lena listened carefully, her mind processing everything. She appreciated the offer, appreciated the apology, but she also knew she had to be cautious. She had been hurt yesterday, and while the words were kind and sincere, actions mattered more. She needed to see that things would truly change. I'll think about it, she repeated. And I want to see that things will actually be different. That respect isn't just words. He nodded solemnly. I understand. And I'll do whatever it takes to show you that. I don't want to lose someone like you in my household. Not because of mistakes, not because of accidents, and certainly not because of my own shortcomings. The honesty in his voice was hard to ignore. Lena felt her chest tighten, but not with fear this time. It was hope. A cautious hope, yes, but hope nonetheless. She realized that while yesterday had been painful, today offered the possibility of something better, something fairer. After a long pause, she finally spoke. I'll give it some thought, but I need to know that the staff will be treated fairly too, that no one else will be blamed without reason. I promise, he said immediately. I'll make sure everyone is treated with fairness and respect. No one else should go through what you went through. Lena nodded slowly. Okay, thank you. For a few more moments, they talked quietly, discussing how to move forward. Mr. Hale spoke with a calmness she hadn't heard before, and Lena realized that he was serious about making changes. She felt a flicker of trust, fragile but growing. Finally, she said, I should go now. I need time to think. He nodded, stepping aside to let her pass. Of course, take all the time you need, and know this. I will do everything I can to make amends. As Lena left the mansion, walking down the driveway with her heart pounding, she felt a strange mix of relief, uncertainty, and hope. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing. For the first time since the accident, she felt heard. She had been acknowledged, believed, and respected. And that made all the difference. Back at her small apartment, she sat with her brother, telling him what had happened. He listened quietly, nodding and smiling, relief written across his face. See, he said, the truth does come out. You'll see, things will be okay. Lena nodded slowly, feeling a small sense of calm for the first time in days. She knew there were still challenges ahead. She didn't know if she would return to the mansion or if she would decide to move on, but she felt stronger now, armed with the knowledge that honesty, patience, and integrity could make a difference even in the face of unfair accusations. That night, as she prepared for bed, she thought about Mr. Hale's words, about the sincerity she had seen in his eyes, and about the possibility of rebuilding trust. It wouldn't be easy. It wouldn't be instant. But she believed for the first time in a long while that things could get better, not just for her, but for everyone involved. The accident had caused pain, yes. It had caused humiliation, fear, and doubt. But it had also created an opportunity, a chance for understanding, forgiveness, and growth. Lena realized that sometimes the hardest moments in life also held the seeds of change. And while yesterday had been filled with anger and accusation, today offered the first glimpse of healing. With that thought, she lay down, closed her eyes, and let herself rest. The mansion, the accident, and even Mr. Hale's anger still lingered in her mind. But for the first time, they didn't feel like a weight crushing her. Instead, they felt like a challenge she was ready to face, with patience, dignity, and hope as her guides. The next morning, Lena woke with a mixture of nervousness and determination. The events of the past days were still fresh in her mind: the accident, the accusation, the anger, and finally, the apology. She had spent the night thinking, weighing her options, trying to decide what to do. Returning to the mansion was not an easy choice. She had been humiliated, blamed unfairly, and pushed out. But she also knew that accepting the offer could be a chance to reclaim her dignity and show that she would not be defined by someone else's mistake. Her younger brother was already awake, preparing a small breakfast for both of them. When Lena came into the kitchen, he looked at her with a hopeful smile. "Have you decided?" he asked softly. She paused for a moment, taking a deep breath. "I think I will go back," she said finally. "Not just for the job, but to show that I won't let unfair blame define me. I want to work, and I want to be treated fairly." Her brother nodded, proud and relieved. "I think that's a good choice," he said. "You've always been strong. This time, they'll see it too." She gave a small smile and finished her breakfast quietly, trying to steady her nerves. Returning to the mansion felt like stepping into a world she had left in pieces. She remembered every detail: the wide hallways, the towering windows, the echo of footsteps, and, most painfully, the crash of the sculpture. She reminded herself that today would be different. Today she had a chance to reclaim control. When she arrived, the staff watched her carefully. Some of them were quietly supportive, others still hesitant. They remembered the accusations and the tension. But they also remembered her calm and graceful response the day she had been dismissed. No one said anything as she walked through the familiar halls, but Lena felt their eyes following her. She held her head high, determined not to let yesterday's humiliation shadow her. Mr. Hale was waiting in the hallway. He greeted her with a quiet nod, his expression serious but gentle. "Good morning, Lena," he said. "I'm glad you came back." She nodded in return. "Thank you for giving me the chance," she said. Her voice was steady, carrying a calm confidence she had built over the last few days. "I want to make things better, not just for me, but for everyone." He gestured for her to follow him. "I appreciate that," he said. "And I want to make sure you feel respected and safe here. Not just today, but every day." As they walked through the halls, he spoke softly about how things would change. He told her that no one would ever be blamed without cause again, that staff members would be treated fairly, and that communication would be better. He explained that he had realized how much his grief had influenced his actions. He was committed to improving not just his behavior, but the environment in the house as a whole. Lena listened carefully. She felt a cautious hope rising in her chest. She could see that he meant what he said, that he truly wanted to correct the mistakes of the past. It wasn't just words. His tone, his body language, and the sincerity in his eyes told her that he was serious. The day began quietly. Lena started with her usual tasks, cleaning and organizing, but this time with a sense of purpose. She worked carefully, paying attention to detail, not just to complete her duties, but to show that she was capable, reliable, and worthy of trust. She noticed small changes around her. Staff members smiled more. Some even offered quiet words of encouragement. The atmosphere in the mansion was different, softer, calmer, less tense. Later, Mr. Hale approached her while she was arranging books on a high shelf. "You're doing well," he said quietly. "I wanted to tell you that I noticed the effort you put in every day. It doesn't go unseen." Lena felt a small warmth in her chest. It was not about praise or reward, it was the acknowledgement of her dedication. The recognition that she mattered not just as a worker, but as a person. "Thank you," she said softly. "That means a lot." The day continued with small but meaningful moments. Lena interacted with the staff, sharing small smiles and quiet conversations. She could feel the respect growing around her, not because she demanded it, but because she had earned it through patience, integrity, and resilience. The tension that had clouded the mansion after the accident was slowly lifting, replaced with a quiet understanding that everyone had a role to play, and everyone deserved fairness. By mid-afternoon, Mr. Hale called Lena into his study. He had a few documents in front of him, but his tone was relaxed, friendly even. "I wanted to discuss something," he said. "I know yesterday and the days before were difficult, but I want to involve you more in decisions here. Your honesty and attention to detail have impressed me. I want to hear your opinions, your thoughts, when it comes to managing things in the house. Lena looked at him, surprised but pleased. She hadn't expected such trust so soon, especially after everything that had happened. I appreciate that, she said. I will do my best to help. I know you will, he said. And I want to make sure everyone knows that trust is important here. That includes the staff. You've shown that, and I want others to follow your example. As she left his study, Lena felt a sense of pride, not from recognition or reward, but from knowing that her integrity and hard work were finally acknowledged. She realized that the accident, while painful, had opened the door to a new chapter, one where fairness, trust, and understanding could grow. Over the next few days, the mansion settled into a new rhythm. Lena worked with quiet diligence, and Mr. Hale observed, learning to balance his authority with empathy. The staff began to feel the change too. Mistakes were no longer met with harsh judgment. Communication was better, and a quiet sense of community developed. Lena could see that even small gestures, listening, acknowledging effort, offering guidance instead of criticism, could transform the environment. One evening, as she finished her tasks and prepared to leave for the day, Mr. Hale approached her. Lena, he said, I want to thank you again. Not just for returning, but for showing courage and patience. You could have walked away forever, but you didn't. You stayed, and you've helped make this place better for everyone. She smiled softly, feeling a warmth she hadn't felt before. I wanted to do the right thing, she said. I wanted to show that mistakes or accidents shouldn't define a person. I didn't want yesterday to control the rest of my life. He nodded thoughtfully. And it hasn't, he said. You've turned it into something positive. That's a rare quality, Lena. I admire that. For the first time, Lena felt a true sense of belonging in the mansion, not because of the job, not because of recognition, but because of respect and trust. She realized that she had grown stronger through the ordeal. She had faced false accusation, humiliation, and doubt, yet she had maintained her dignity and composure. And now, she was being seen for who she really was. Days turned into weeks. And the atmosphere in the mansion continued to improve. Lena's confidence grew, and she became an essential part of the household. Her attention to detail, her patience, and her fairness set an example for others. Staff members began to approach her for advice. She helped create a culture of respect and collaboration. Mr. Hale, too, changed. He became calmer, more considerate, and more thoughtful in his interactions. He learned the value of listening before judging, of taking time to understand the situation, and of acknowledging the efforts of those around him. The accident that had once brought anger and division had now become a turning point, teaching lessons that neither of them would forget. One afternoon, Lena found herself standing in the hallway where the sculpture had once stood. She looked at the spot, now empty, and felt a mixture of emotions. The memory of the accident still lingered, but it no longer held the same weight of fear and humiliation. Instead, it reminded her of resilience, of growth, and of the power of truth. Mr. Hale appeared beside her, quietly. I sometimes think about yesterday, he said, and I realize how much it taught me. About patience, about fairness, about trust, and about the strength of people like you. Lena smiled softly. It taught me a lot too, she said. I've learned that even when people judge too quickly, the truth can still come out, and that it's worth staying strong even when it's hard. They stood in silence for a moment, the quiet of the mansion surrounding them. The sun cast a warm light through the tall windows, illuminating the hall, the walls, and the small traces of dust in the corners. For Lena, the light felt like a symbolist sign that even after mistakes, misunderstandings, and pain, there was always the possibility of healing, fairness, and hope. By evening, Lena returned to her small apartment. Greeted by her brother's cheerful voice, they shared a quiet dinner, talking about small things, laughing softly, and enjoying the peace of the moment. For Lena, life had regained a sense of balance. She knew there would still be challenges, still be moments of doubt, but she felt equipped to face them with honesty, integrity, and strength. The mansion, too, had changed. What had once been a place of tension, fear, and judgment had become a place of respect, collaboration, and trust. Lena had not only reclaimed her dignity, but she had also helped transform the environment around her. And in doing so, she had shown that one person's courage and integrity could make a lasting difference. As she prepared for bed that night, Lena reflected on everything that had happened: the accident, the accusation, the humiliation, and finally, the apology and the chance to return had all been part of a journey, painful, challenging, but ultimately transformative. She felt a quiet pride in herself, a sense of accomplishment that had nothing to do with wealth or position, but everything to do with character and resilience. For the first time in a long while, she felt at peace. The storm of the past days had passed, leaving behind clarity, understanding, and hope. And as she closed her eyes, she knew that whatever life brought next, she was ready to face it with courage, patience, and dignity, knowing that the truth would always have a way of shining through.